So at this point, I can see Dororo ending in two different ways. The first of which will be Hyakkimaru dies, and the first thing and the only thing he gets to see when he regains his eyes as he kills his brother is Dororo's face, and then you get a sledgehammer to the heart, and then you see the kingdom fall, and everything is just in ruin. Or the second option will be that we see his adoptive father, as we see him hold what appears to be a Buddha statue, makes a sacrifice on his behalf so Hyakkimaru can live, which would be a very interesting way of contrasting how the series started off to how it could end, because the series started off with a father sacrificing his unborn son to demons for his own prosperity, but if we ended the show with his adoptive father sacrificing himself for his adoptive son, then that would be a very interesting contrast, letting Hyakkimaru continue on his path and hopefully find happiness in his life. There's two ways that they could go, and either one would truly work for me, because you have so many revenge stories in anime, and it's very one-sided, it's very black and white. With Dororo, it's really painted as everyone could die here, both the kingdom as well as Hyakkimaru, because both sides have really become demons. And I love the themes in this episode, because it's really kind of highlighting what I've been talking about in the past, like 10 episodes back, how if the kingdom really knew what led to their happiness, they would probably be okay with it. They would turn their head and look away, because why should my life be impacted for one person? And we see that in this episode, and it's infuriating, but that's how people are. We're selfish. You can almost think of it like tax brackets. The higher up you go in the tax bracket, the more money you obviously have, and the more taxes you pay, and people get upset, like, why should I have to pay more money so people less fortunate than myself get to have easy things handed out to them? Because people are assholes. People don't understand that we need to give up sometimes things for ourselves so others can be happy. And people don't want to do that. They want everything handed to them without the cost being put back on them. And that's kind of what we're seeing with Hyakkimaru, is why should one person have to live so everyone else has to die, basically? And I like what his mother says, because she says, like, one person isn't worth more than a kingdom, but the issue is how we got here. And the whole idea of this episode is saying that even though Hyakkimaru, the way he's going about this right now is wrong, he's literally losing himself in demonic rage and becoming what it is he's hunting, the one thing he's doing right is he's taking action into his own hands. From Dago, from pretty much everyone in this story, they've all been, relying on samurais, the way of the current, status quo. And it's time for people to start taking things in their own hands. Take things that you need to get, and not rely on others, not rely on demons, and do things that really feel like they make sense. And I love that, because it's such an interesting contrast to what we've been seeing up to this point, because his mother literally says, like, of course, logically, the kingdom's more important than my son. However, the way we got here is absolutely wrong, and we can't undo this. It's really interesting just how they were building this up throughout the episode, because it felt as if there was no real right or wrong side throughout here. That, yeah, you got people like Dago, yeah, you got people like currently even Hyakkimaru, who's basically a demon, but at the end of the day, there's more than just them suffering. For Dororo, she's witnessing the closest person to her, really her family at this point in time, being lost and is going to die, wishing that, just stop. You don't need your eyes anymore, I will be your eyes. Anything you need in life, I will be there for you, just stop killing, because killing will taint the heart. You have the kingdom basically falling down into ruin, because of a deal that was made, and also the deal that is now being broken off. And it's really interesting seeing how all the sides are kind of contemplating it, how just the general folk are realizing that maybe it's time we stop relying on samurai. War after war, time after time, we always rely on the status quo. It's time for us to take action into our own hands. Maybe it'll take years, but that's kind of how political uprising starts, New political parties get formed because they're sick of the status quo of just two parties leading their nations, or just having a samurai and his son continue to rule. Why not pick your ruler? Democracy kind of being created. That's kind of what's at stake here, and I love that. And as you're seeing all these interesting themes play out, you're witnessing the kingdom burn. The kingdom is most definitely going to fall. There's no debating that at this point in time. There's only one demon left, and that's his brother, and his brother isn't going to live. The question is, will Hyakkimaru live? In the manga, I believe the manga ends with him just kind of walking off, and he hasn't even killed all the demons yet. Mappa is creating their own story with the template laid out from the original source material, and I think they're doing a really remarkable job at bringing something to life that makes you think about each side in a different way while not painting a revenge story as something that seems cliche, but rather there are so many ways to interpret what's being told here, and that's the brilliance of Dororo. I absolutely didn't expect some of the things in this episode. Like, I obviously expected that his brother as well as his allies would probably end up dead. That's something I was expecting. I wasn't expecting to have a head ripped off by a demonic horse, or to then just have your ribs collapsing in as you get kicked by said horse, and then having that horse be brutally killed as its kid comes to kind of mend your heart. Which was honestly a very bittersweet way to represent Hyakkimaru, because it's showing that even if you are a demonic, you can be pulled back into normal reality and maybe become what you once were before you got lost in rage and just demonic lust. And I thought it was just so heartbreaking seeing just an animal, someone we had no connection to up to this point, but just seeing like what was forced upon them to what ultimately led to their demise, and how even at their dying moments, they didn't look at them as a beast, but rather the mother. And I think that's really important, because it's not really about Hyakkimaru regaining his biological mother. It's more like his mother kind of accepting what's happened up to this point, what they can do to change this, and where it has to end. It doesn't really matter if she lives or dies in her heart. It pretty much matters what can she do for her sons. And at this point, like the priest says, I don't think there's any way to stop it until one of them dies. And based on the burning building, it just feels like both are going to die. And I really think if Hyakkimaru does die, he is going to regain his sight and he's going to see Dororo as he perishes. I think that's a very likely possibility, but at the same time, because we do know his adoptive father does have something that pretty much resembles, the Buddha statue, I wouldn't be surprised if he gives his life for Hyakkimaru's, which I think would be a really awesome way to end the show, because it'd be such a contrast to how it started to how it ends, and it kind of ties into the theme of taking action into your own hands, sacrificing yourself for someone else, not the other way around, which would be a really remarkable way. Like with last week's episode, they remain to have the animation feel unnatural, unworldly, and not feel like it was humans fighting, but rather it was demons. We literally have 3 demons fighting our main character, who basically has been lost in demonic lust, and it absolutely showed in the visuals. You're seeing these movements that you just normally wouldn't expect a human to be able to do, the way they were spinning around on swords, getting your head cut off and still having the energy to fight. The only reason you can do that is because you're possessed by a demon. I love the idea of like when he does get his head ripped off and then you see one lose their arm, they're spinning around on their sword to do another attack, and it was just so brutal, just abstract, and just really impressive animation. And to just see the pain that it's causing, this battle is just pure demonic lust, and you wish it could stop alongside all sides that are kind of viewing this. You even have Dago, who is just basically a ruler in this time period, lost, thinking everything he's done, he can't blame himself. There's no way that the ruler would make the wrong call, because he's lost in his own head. I'm actually glad they didn't kill him off early, because you're watching his kingdom crumble because of his own actions, and it's really interesting seeing the denial in his eyes, and I really expect that he might even live at the end of the show, just seeing his entire kingdom burned, and he has to live with that. I think that'd be a pretty poetic way to end his story, not even getting killed, but just having nothing at the end of basically sacrificing your son for everything. I think that'd be a really interesting way to go about it. But I think there was just a lot of, it's a weird feeling. It wasn't depression, it wasn't happiness. I was watching this episode play out, feeling as if we always knew this was coming. We always knew that something like this was coming, and I have a couple of ideas of how it could end, but it just felt like Mappa knew what they were doing. They were building up to something that just makes us feel almost like all the emotions that we have in us kind of combined into one interesting feeling that you only get to experience, every few hundred anime you watch, you kind of find a show like Dororo, and you just say, this is an interesting feeling, and it's telling you an interesting story, exploring characters in such a non-linear way that you don't get to experience too often, and based on the fact that it is being sort of adapted from a very old manga, but kind of reinvented in a modern way, it's no surprise that it feels so different than most anime being made in the 2019 anime climate. I definitely thought this was one of the strongest episodes for sure. I think the end game is pretty much the strongest episodes. It just keeps kind of continuing on that really strong path, and making us feel like, holy shit, everything makes sense why they're building up in the way they are, and just seeing who's currently alive, who's currently dead, and just what ultimately led to Hyakkimaru having his arms. I mean, there was no other way. Of course he was going to hold on to those blades, but the fact that he was still fighting with those blades, it just feels so bad. It feels so good, it feels so weird. And that's kind of the brilliance of Dororo. It's really risen over these months of just being like, this is one of the most interesting anime I've seen. I mean, it's just something I won't be forgetting. There's some anime that you just continue to think about month after month, even years later. There's like a handful in my mind that I continue to think about. I'm just like, I can't believe what it showed me. And I definitely feel as if Dororo is going to be one of those shows. We have one episode left. It feels like it only needs one more episode to wrap up what it's telling here, and there could be an ending where both sides fall, or possibly only one side will fall, and maybe Hyakkimaru will get that happy ending. I think they could make a happy ending work here for Hyakkimaru and not make it feel like an asshole, but they could also make a bittersweet ending where both sides fail and make it feel just completely heartbreaking, but honestly, very fulfilling. I think they could go either way, and I'd be satisfied with that. Obviously, I know that if Hyakkimaru dies and this kingdom falls, they're going to be very mad, thinking that, oh, it was just a cliche revenge story, but it really isn't. They're telling something so much more complex, as I've expressed over the weeks here. But I definitely would be okay with either of these situations playing out, but I guess we'll have to wait and see what Mappa is delivering. Maybe they'll kind of come with a curveball, an ending no one could expect, or it'll be one of the two that I predicted here. Time will tell, I suppose. But for everyone who did watch this week's episode of Dororo, what did you think of just the brutality? What did you expect? What didn't you expect? Let me know your feelings and thoughts down in that comment section below. If you did enjoy this video, be sure to drop a like and also hit that subscribe button if you haven't been new. So until next time, everyone, please take care and have a good one.